Hey everyone, Tiago here. Today we're going to be taking a look at this. This is going to be the NYXI Hyperion 2 wireless controller for the Nintendo Switch. Now, this was originally designed, of course, for the Switch 1 because, it is Bluetooth, it pairs with the Switch. So we're going to focus on that as the Switch 2 is its own world pretty much. But this really fixes a lot of problems with the Joy-Cons. A lot of people still have the Switch 1, especially considering the price of the Switch 2, $450. It's a little hard to get, so not everybody has jumped ship to the Switch 2. I got the Switch 2, and while it is, a big improvement in some areas, like Zelda looks so much better, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, it's still a little bit limited in the new games that it has. And, it's not quite there yet. It's promising, but it's not quite there yet. So the Switch 1 still, very, very popular. And one of its weak points, definitely the Joy-Con. So let's talk about some ways where this addresses those problems. The number one is going to be the stick drift that a lot of people complain about, and like the build quality of the Joy-Cons. I've had it happen on mine as well. So this is going to have Hall effect sticks, which they're going to have, instead of traditional potentiometers, it's going to be magnetic. So that's going to be a whole lot better. They have a minimal chance of stick drift. It's going to last a lot longer. The sticks feel great. Sometimes Hall effects can be a little more sensitive, so you have to kind of get used to it compared to the traditional sticks. But aside from that, definitely a big selling point that these are Hall effects. So, very small chance that you'll have issues with the sticks themselves. So this is the box that you get. It's a nice small box, and you get this nice little protective clear case with the Joy-Cons themselves. And then in the box, not much else going on, very minimalist. But, for Joy-Cons, you don't want something massive anyway. You're going to get, obviously, your little book with instructions, no cables or docks or anything like that. You get some other little things, but, very small, a simple package that comes, safely protected. So this is the little case, and this case you can use for storage. It's like a hard plastic. So if you have to travel or something like that, or just want to keep it free from dust, you can definitely use the included case, which is very nice, because then you don't have to buy an additional case. So as you can see, you have the two, different controllers, the left and right, basically. And then, nothing else in the case. That's it. So you're going to get just these two, and they have their little connection for the Nintendo Switch. Just keep in mind that this doesn't come with that, the centerpiece, like, for example, that the Switch comes with, where you can connect your Joy-Cons and use this as like a full one-piece controller. So these are meant to be used basically on the Switch itself. Throughout the video, you may hear me clicking it. That's going to be likely my favorite part. Listen to that. They're so tactile and so responsive that it leaves the original Switch Joy-Con like pretty much in the dirt. So that's going to be, the biggest selling point after Hall effects, I think, for most people. The buttons on the original Joy-Con, really not that great. It feels like a little mushy, a little undefined, especially the joystick. It's like, I remember when I started playing the Switch more, like Breath of the Wild, and I was like, this game is great, but the controller really sucks. Like the Joy-Cons just felt sluggish, and it wasn't perfectly ergonomic. It just didn't feel good. I've been playing on, PlayStation controllers that feel significantly better, and Xbox controllers. So the Switch Joy-Cons are definitely a little bit, very disappointing. So this just like blows it out of the water. So let's talk about these face buttons. So on the left one, you're going to get basically your D-pad, which is 4 separate buttons. If you ever buy like a custom controller from like Battle Beaver or something like that, you can get these type of separate buttons, and obviously that's like a premium feature. So this thing is packed with those type of features, so that you can hear, it's a mechanical switch, very, very satisfying, incredibly nice. And then here you have your D-pad, up, down, left, right. It's basically 4 separate buttons like you would have for your Y, B, A, X. So very, very cool there. And then you have the plus and minus on both sides as well, just like you would on the Switch controller. So that way you can pair things, and it's roughly basically the same similar layout, like that. Like you have your home button on this stick right here. And then even the Hall effect sticks, when you move them around, they feel and sound solid, really, really good. They're nice and clicky also, which gives you a nice tactile feedback. In some games, you have to hold it down to run, and you do use it a lot. When you don't use it, you don't use it, and then games that you play, like you definitely use it, a good amount. So the face buttons in general are just very nice, and you can see as I turn it on, that's something else the Joy Cons don't have is like really nice, RGB. Very, very cool. And this is great because it's not only for like visual, the visual aesthetics of it. You can actually, if you're playing in the dark, you can actually see where everything is. You look down and you get a good guide for where things are. Especially, let's say somebody, maybe a kid or somebody newer that's playing, they may not be as familiar with the controller, especially a different one. So having some type of a little bit of light, aside from looking absolutely amazing, it makes the Switch look like a Switch 3, like when you have this on the Switch. It's very, very impressive. And then you also have a little button like on the back, and you can see you can kind of go through different modes. You can make it static if you don't want it to be, like the multicolor RGB. There's a little button, very easy, with the little, light bulb symbol, LED symbol, basically. And then you can just press it, and you can cycle through the various colors, and then you're gonna have the same thing on the back here of this one, so you can cycle the colors. It's right on the back, and right above it, obviously, you have that little button to release the Joy-Con after it's connected to the Switch. When you have it on there and you're charging it, and it's paired to the console, and things like that, etc. Then on the inner part, it's pretty much just like on the Joy-Con. See here, you're gonna have your little bumpers here and your little pairing light, so that with the little different LEDs and everything like that. So if you're gonna play like this, like you would on the Switch, if you're gonna use them as two separate controllers on some games like Mario Party, etc. You can do that. So the functionality is basically like the original Joy-Con, but with the added build quality and tactility. And something else really cool, if you can see here, the front panel is magnetic, and you can actually swap it out. See, it comes off. This is great for you want to, cleans a little bit of dust off of this. And then, it's very easy to snap on. So, that's pretty awesome. And it's completely solid. Like you wouldn't even know it was magnetic. And there's a little divot here for you to like just put your fingernail and pull it out. But if you don't do that, like it's never going to come off by itself. You have to really get it right in the in the right spot there in order to get it off. So that's a very, very cool design. It's good for the longevity of it. Also, you can always like swap this out. So very, very cool. As we go up to the top, you're going to have your bumper, which is very tactile. You can hear that like a mouse click, right? Very, very nicely defined. And then your trigger, which, by default, Nintendo controllers seem to have already like, shorter actuation for their triggers, almost like what you would want like in a game like Call of Duty or like an FPS game or something like that. So this definitely has it, and it's extremely satisfying and clicky. I mean, you throw this on a Switch, and it's just like the next level, really. It's so tactile, so satisfying. And then, everything else, it functions basically like a regular Switch controller. It makes the experience like, it's like you're playing on a Pro $200 controller, basically, when you have your Switch and you're actually playing, instead of playing on what feels like an afterthought for the original Joy-Cons, because they're just not really premium feeling, honestly. That's why people buy the Switch Pro controller, which feels better, more ergonomic. But this I prefer basically to the Pro controller, especially if I'm playing, with the Switch handheld, because seriously, like the tactility is just incredible. So you get that, it's really satisfying, and it's great to have this on a console like the Nintendo, especially with the D-pad being 4 individual buttons. Because what does Nintendo have more than any other console? It's like retro games, fighting games, platformers, and with those traditionally you would use the D-pad, not necessarily these type of joysticks, which are more like maybe PlayStation and Xbox style for like 3D games. So like for if you're going to play original Nintendo classic games, which the Switch has a load of, you're going to want to use a really nice D-pad for like a fighting game as well. So that's that's definitely a huge bonus to have on the Switch. So if you're still on the Switch, and you haven't made the switch to the Switch 2, or even if you have, those Joy-Cons, while they're better than the original ones, they still have a lot of the same drawbacks. It's regular potentiometers, they can get stick drift. They're not Hall effects like these are here. And the controller feels a little bit better and has a little mouse function, but it's still a little bit undefined. These feel even better than the Switch 2 Joy-Cons. Just the tactility and the build quality, solid. They're not like cheaply built. They're very, very solid. And then obviously in the back, you have your two little buttons in the back here. ML and MR is how they're basically labeled. Everything else, functionality is very similar. You pair it, the same way to the Switch as you would with the Joy-Con. You can put it right on there to charge. So overall, like, I really, really recommend these. Like I've been previously, I looked for something to upgrade the Joy-Cons, and I love clicky controllers and tactile controllers and controllers that are made to like a higher level. And this definitely, when I was looking and searching, this was the one that really, really hit the spot. Like it just feels so good to play. So this is going to be the NYXI Hyperion 2. So if you guys are interested, I'll leave a link down below. They did send me this to review, but I actually have more than one. I've bought more than one because I have more than one Switch, and I'd buy it any day of the week. It's definitely my favorite Joy-Con, and it does have some other features that the Joy-Cons don't have as well. Like you have your little turbo button, so that way you can set different parameters to different buttons if you want to get into that. I usually like using it just as a regular controller without turbo, without anything like that. But that option is there if you do take advantage of that in some games. It might make your life a little easier with having some more, faster responses and things like that. But overall, basically the same feature set, at least as the Joy-Cons, and then upgraded to a much more premium level.